Andrea Gibson, a fearless and groundbreaking poet whose voice ignited stages, hearts, and revolutions, is gone at 49, leaving behind a legacy that doesn't fade with time but burns brighter with every soul their words have ever touched, every heart they've healed, and every silence they've shattered. Because Andrea was never just a poet. They were a lifeline, a mirror, a rebellion, a thunderclap in a world too comfortable with quiet suffering. Born in Maine, Gibson rose from humble beginnings to become Colorado State Poet Laureate and one of the most influential spoken word artists of their time. But their true power wasn't in titles. It was in truth, in the way they confronted identity, gender, politics, pain, and mortality without fear, without filter, and without apology. Because for Gibson, poetry wasn't performance. It was purpose, survival, and protest. Diagnosed with terminal ovarian cancer 4 years ago, Gibson didn't retreat. They roared, writing feverishly through their pain, defying the limitations of a terminal diagnosis by transforming it into timeless art that continues to breathe even after their final breath. Surrounded in their last moments at home in Boulder, Colorado by their wife Meg, 4 ex-girlfriends, their parents, dozens of friends, and their 3 beloved dogs, not as a farewell, but as a celebration of the life they refused to let cancer erase. Because Gibson didn't just live, they lived louder, fuller, and more fiercely than most ever dare. And that courage bled through every line they wrote. Like in their soul-ripping piece, Love Letter from the Afterlife, penned before their passing, where they proclaimed death is not the opposite of presence, but its magnification. When I left my body, I did not go away. That portal of light was not a portal to elsewhere, but a portal to here. I am more here than I ever was before. A declaration so hauntingly powerful, it feels like the voice of eternity whispering in the ear of the living. And Gibson didn't just write about death. They rewrote what it means to face it, to embrace it, to challenge it with grace and grit. And their documentary, directed by Ryan White and featuring original work from Sarah Bareilles and Brandi Carlile, left Sundance audiences in tears, not just for the inevitable loss, but for the immense beauty Gibson brought into the world despite the clock ticking down, despite not expecting to even live long enough to see the film completed, because that's who they were. A defier of odds, a breaker of chains, a builder of bridges for anyone who ever felt lost in the shadows, especially LGBTQ+ youth who found in Gibson's work a lifeline, a reason to believe that they were worthy of love, of joy, of existence. One such life, that of Aidan Stay, was saved because his mother, Linda Williams Stay, once took him to see Gibson perform in San Francisco a decade ago, where Gibson lit the room on fire with raw truth, turning laughter and tears into a shared revolution of empathy. And when Aidan later came out as transgender, it was Gibson's poetry that helped Linda understand, accept, and love more deeply. And when she herself was diagnosed with cancer, that same poetry helped her endure, bringing her son home to care for her, uniting them once again in the embrace of Gibson's words. And this wasn't an isolated case. It was a ripple effect that spread across small towns, big cities, and isolated hearts as Gibson became a beacon for queer kids in places where acceptance was scarce, hope was fleeting, and poetry became protest, prayer, and promise. Because they didn't just write poems, they started fires of healing and truth wherever they went. And when they accepted an invitation to perform in conservative southern Utah, it was more than a reading. It was a revolution, a moment that changed lives, cracked open minds, and poured sunlight into places long starved of it. And their books, You Better Be Lightning, Take Me With You, Lord of the Butterflies, aren't just collections of poems. They're spiritual blueprints for surviving grief, depression, injustice, and identity crisis, all while refusing to let go of wonder, of beauty, of love. And Governor Jared Polis got it right when he said Gibson was truly one of a kind, with the unmatched power to connect across communities, demographics, and politics, all through the sheer honesty of their craft. Identifying as genderqueer and coming out at age 20 while studying creative writing at a Catholic college in Maine, Gibson never bowed to conformity or diluted their identity for comfort. They embraced the in-between, the undefined, the raw edges of humanity. Famously writing, "I am happiest on the road when I'm not here or there, but in between." And in that space between binaries, they became infinite, uncontainable, a force that could not be labeled or silenced. And their longtime friend and documentary producer Tig Notaro put it best when she described Andrea as a rock star in spirit and in voice, a performer whose truth could split the sky, and whose final days, though agonizing, were filled with the kind of radiant, human connection most only dream of witnessing once in a lifetime. And as Notaro said, the beauty of those last moments was indescribable, because that was Andrea. Indescribable, unforgettable, unstoppable. And even as death approached, they met it with verses that pierced through fear and embraced the unknown with stunning clarity, like in their poem, How the Worst Day of My Life Became My Best, where they turned suffering into salvation, declaring, when I realized the storm was inevitable, I made it my medicine. And 2 years later, still wondering about the afterlife, not with dread, but with longing, will the afterlife be harder if I remember the people I love or forget them? Either way, please let me remember. A plea so human, so universal, it echoes like scripture. And now as tributes pour in from friends, fans, and fellow artists, it's clear that Gibson's legacy is not of loss, but of revolution, of remembrance, of relentless truth. And while her physical presence may be gone, her voice will never be silenced. Her poetry will never stop speaking, because Andrea Gibson didn't just write, they resurrected us. They redefined us, and in doing so, they became more than poet laureate, more than performer, more than survivor. They became immortal. And now, as the world mourns and remembers, their words rise louder than ever, a defiant anthem against silence. A love letter from the afterlife reminding us that those who truly live never really die.